Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're exploring high leverage interventions, those strategic actions that can unlock outsized impact. By targeting critical points in a system,
Uh-huh.
it's about working smarter, not harder, right?
Absolutely. Efficiency is key, but it
Okay.
goes beyond that.
Right.
A high-leverage intervention is about finding those precise pressure points where a tiny change
Yeah,
can trigger a cascade of positive effects.
at that.
Kind of like a domino effect, but with much bigger dominoes.
Yeah, those are some serious dominoes. And that makes me think of
Hmm.
the Tennessee Star experiment.
Oh, a classic example.
It found that students who had just 1 year with a high-quality teacher
Yeah.
ended up earning, get this, an average of $80,000 more over their lifetimes.
It's mind-blowing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And it really highlights how investing in good teachers pays off in the long run.
So it's not just about test scores.
No, not at all.
It's about their, whole trajectory in life.
Exactly. A great teacher can really shape a student's cognitive skills and open doors to all sorts of opportunities.
Setting them up for success later on.
It's like that saying, a rising tide lifts all boats. But in this case, the teacher is the tide.
Makes you realize how much impact one person can have.
Truly.
Okay, ready for a totally different example?
Hit me with it.
Have you heard of David Shapiro?
The systems thinker.
Yeah, that's him.
Yeah, I followed his work. Fascinating stuff.
He did this experiment with his circadian rhythms.
Right.
Made some simple changes,
Yeah.
like stopping eating after 5 p.m.
Interesting.
And he saw
I bet he saw.
huge improvements in his sleep
Yeah.
and stress levels and just overall well-being.
What's really cool about Shapiro's story is the biology behind it, right?
Yeah, what's actually happening in our bodies.
So circadian rhythms affect everything.
Mhm.
Hormone production,
Okay.
cell regeneration, even gene expression.
Wow.
It's like there's an internal clock that dictates how our bodies function.
Yeah.
And by aligning his habits with his natural rhythms, Shapiro was essentially working with his body,
Uh-huh.
not against it.
Right.
Like he cracked the code of his own internal operating system.
I like that, the code.
Yeah.
So even tiny changes to our routine
Mm-hmm.
can have a huge impact on our well-being.
It's true.
It's like we're uncovering these hidden levers inside us
Yeah.
that can unlock a whole new level of health and energy.
It's the beauty of understanding high leverage interventions.
I see that.
Finding those key points where a small adjustment can yield a significant positive outcome.
So let's travel back in time for a sec
Okay, time travel.
and look at Gutenberg and his printing press.
Oh, now there's a prime example.
It revolutionized how information spread, right?
Before the printing press,
Ah.
knowledge was basically a luxury good,
Really?
copied by hand, super time-consuming.
Wow.
It was Gutenberg's invention that made information accessible to the masses,
Right.
fueling social transformation on a massive scale.
Can you imagine a world without easily available books?
It's hard to even fathom.
It's mind-boggling. It shows how a single invention can really reshape history.
And it wasn't just the tech itself.
Yeah.
It's how that tech interacted with the whole system.
Okay, I see that.
More books led to more literacy, which then led to even more demand for books.
So it was like a feedback loop.
Exactly. A virtuous cycle that propelled society forward.
So let's fast forward back to the present day.
Back to the future.
Yeah, exactly. What about something like the Click It or Ticket campaign?
Oh, interesting example.
I mean, it really worked in getting people to buckle up.
It did. It's a brilliant example of using social norms to drive behavioral change.
So it wasn't just about telling people to wear seatbelts. It was about changing the whole social context around it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
By framing seatbelt use as both a safety measure and a social expectation,
Right.
they created a feedback loop that encouraged compliance
Okay.
and ultimately saved countless lives.
So how do we apply that kind of thinking to other challenges, though? We can't create a Click It or Ticket campaign for every problem, right?
True, but the principle remains the same.
Okay.
It's about understanding the system,
Yeah.
identifying the key leverage points,
Right.
and then designing interventions that nudge the system in the right direction, you see.
So it's about being strategic and understanding the ripple effects of our actions.
Precisely.
But what happens when these principles are used unethically?
Oh, that's a crucial point.
Like those social media algorithms that are designed to keep us scrolling?
Yes, those are tricky.
Even if it's not good for us.
The double-edged sword, right?
Definitely.
We have to consider the ethics of how these principles are applied.
This idea of leveraged literacy really intrigues me.
Oh, tell me more.
What is that exactly?
So leveraged literacy is about understanding the power of these principles,
Okay.
but also using them responsibly,
Uh-huh.
like with those social media algorithms you mentioned.
Yeah.
By understanding how they work,
Right.
we become more discerning consumers of information,
Makes sense.
more aware of potential manipulation, and more empowered to make choices that align with our own values.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like we're given this powerful tool,
Yes.
but we need the wisdom to use it wisely.
Absolutely.
So how can we become more leverage literate?
There are a few key steps. First, study history.
History, huh?
Yeah. Learn from past interventions.
What worked, what didn't.
Exactly. Both the successes and the failures.
So learn from the past to shape the future.
That's the idea.
I like that. What's next?
Second, observe systems. Start noticing the connections,
Yeah.
the feedback loops, the bottlenecks in everyday life.
So basically, develop a systems mindset.
Precisely. See the bigger picture.
That would be so helpful in so many areas.
You got it.
What's the final step?
The final step is to experiment and iterate.
Experiments.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to try new things.
Okay.
Test small changes and see what happens.
So like treat life as a series of experiments.
Exactly. Constantly learning and refining our approach.
I love that. That's such a great way to think about it.
Glad you like it.
But before we get too carried away with all these experiments, let's take a moment to think about what we've covered so far.
Good idea. Little recap.
We've gone from education to circadian rhythms to the printing press.
Wow, what a journey.
It's incredible how many different things this concept touches.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
Oh no, right? There's so much more to explore.
I'm excited to see where this deep dive takes us.
Me too.
There are so many more examples and applications to uncover.
I can't wait.
Let's keep digging.
Sounds good to me. It really is amazing how this idea of high leverage interventions, it pops up in so many different places.
It's everywhere.
We've gone from education to circadian rhythms to the printing press. It's just wild.
And there's still so much more to discover.
I know. Before we went on that little tangent, you mentioned studying history.
Yes.
And specifically those education reforms in Japan and Finland.
Ah, yes. Those are fascinating cases.
What made them so successful?
Well, they both achieved incredible results, but they took very different paths. It goes to show that context really matters.
Okay, so Japan first.
Okay, so after World War II, Japan really prioritized high-quality teaching.
So they were starting fresh, in a way.
In a way, yeah.
Interesting.
They focused on rigorous curriculum, highly trained teachers, and ongoing professional development.
So investing in the teachers was key.
Absolutely. And there's a deep cultural respect for educators in Japan.
It's no wonder they're always at the top of those international rankings.
They consistently perform exceptionally well.
That's pretty impressive.
It is. Now, Finland, on the other hand,
Yeah, what do they do?
they focused on equity and well-being. They wanted to ensure that every child, regardless of background, had access to a good education.
They even got rid of standardized testing until the end of secondary school.
Wow, really? No standardized tests?
That's right. Their emphasis was on holistic learning, fostering creativity, and critical thinking.
That's a pretty different approach.
Very different, yeah.
But it clearly works for them.
It does. And just like in Japan,
Yeah.
teachers in Finland are highly respected and given a lot of autonomy in the classroom.
So two very different approaches, but both super successful.
Precisely.
What's the takeaway here? Besides that, there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
I think the main takeaway is that you have to understand the context.
Yeah. Right. It's not a cookie-cutter approach.
Exactly. What works in one place might not work in another.
It's about finding those unique leverage points within each specific situation.
That's it.
It reminds me of what you said before about observing systems.
Yeah.
Like, we need to become detectives,
I like that. Detectives of leverage points.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But how do we actually do that? I mean, especially with these big complex systems like education or public health. Well, that's where leverage literacy comes in.
Right.
It's not about having all the answers up front.
Okay.
It's about asking the right questions.
Okay, so give me an example.
Let's go back to David Shapiro and his circadian rhythm experiment.
Okay, yeah.
He didn't just magically stumble upon that solution.
Yeah.
He really observed his own system, looked for patterns in his energy levels and well-being.
So he was paying close attention.
Very close attention.
Gotcha.
And then he experimented until he found what worked for him.
So he was like his own scientist,
Exactly. He conducted a personalized experiment to optimize his health.
So we need to become more aware of the feedback our bodies and our surroundings are giving us.
That's a great way to put it.
It's about cultivating a sense of curiosity. Right.
Exactly.
and a willingness to experiment.
Yes. What if we approached our everyday lives with that mindset? Always looking for those little tweaks that could lead to big improvements.
Okay, so instead of feeling overwhelmed by all the complexity, we can start by focusing on what we can control.
Love that. Start with what you can control.
Those little changes we can make within our own systems.
That's empowering.
It is.
And remember, it's not just about personal well-being.
Right.
Think about your work, your relationships, your community.
Okay, I see that.
Where are the bottlenecks? Where could a small change make a big difference?
Okay, so let's say I'm feeling totally swamped at work.
Overwhelmed.
Yeah, constantly putting out fires, struggling to keep up.
I've been there.
Where do we even start looking for those leverage points?
You got to zoom out.
Zoom out.
Yeah, like take a step back and look at the system as a whole.
See the bigger picture.
Exactly. What are the recurring patterns? What's causing those fires?
Okay.
Are there any tasks or processes that are creating unnecessary bottlenecks?
So analyze the situation before jumping into action.
You got it.
That makes sense.
Sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective.
So what if the problem's more about the company culture,
Ah, the deeply ingrained stuff.
Yeah, like the way things have always been done.
That's where the real challenge lies, but it's also where the biggest potential for impact is.
How so?
Sometimes the best interventions involve challenging those assumptions,
Okay.
suggesting new ways of doing things.
That takes some guts.
It does. It takes courage and creativity.
But the payoff could be huge, right?
Absolutely.
It's like being an organizational therapist.
I love that analogy.
It's helping the company figure out its issues.
Uncovering the root causes.
Yeah, it's not about pointing fingers.
No blame games.
It's about finding systemic solutions that benefit everyone.
Exactly. And remember,
Yeah.
even small changes can create a ripple effect.
All right, we've talked about that.
Sometimes a simple conversation or a new process can transform the entire organization.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It is. It's the butterfly effect in action.
This is all so inspiring. I feel like we're uncovering this whole secret world.
A world of leverage points.
Yeah. Leverage points that can really change things.
Change things for the better.
But with that knowledge comes responsibility, right?
100%. We can't just focus on how to create leverage.
Right.
We have to think about why we're doing it and who it's for.
Ethical considerations.
Exactly. Using this knowledge ethically and responsibly.
So back to leverage literacy.
It's about wisdom and discernment.
Yeah.
Knowing when and how to use this power for good.
I'm really starting to grasp this idea.
That's great.
But I think it's time for a quick breather.
A pause for reflection.
Yeah. Before we dive into those ethical dimensions.
Let's gather our thoughts.
Yeah, and get ready for the final part of our journey.
Sounds like a plan.
Welcome back, everyone. This deep dive into high leverage interventions has been quite a journey.
It has. So many fascinating examples.
I know, and we've covered so much.
From personal health to global systems.
It feels like we're just scratching the surface, though,
It's true. There's always more to explore.
But it's not just about understanding these principles.
No, not at all. It's about putting them into practice.
Making them real.
Exactly.
We've talked about history, observing systems, experimenting.
Right. Those are key.
But I feel like there's one more piece of the puzzle.
I think you might be right.
What's the secret ingredient for making a real impact?
Collaboration.
Collaboration, huh?
We can't do it alone,
Yeah, that makes sense.
The most effective interventions often involve bringing people together.
Okay, I see that.
Different perspectives, shared resources, a common goal.
Like that click it or ticket campaign.
Perfect example.
It wasn't just a slogan, it was a whole coordinated effort.
Law enforcement, public health officials, the community, everyone working together.
It took a collective push to shift the culture around seatbelt use.
And ultimately save lives.
That's powerful.
We need more of that,
More collaborative action.
Yeah, driven by this shared understanding of how to create leverage for good.
It makes me think about that ripple effect we keep talking about.
Uh-huh.
It's not just our own actions.
It's bigger than that.
It's how they inspire and influence others.
Exactly. Think about those education reforms in Japan and Finland.
Yeah.
They weren't just imposed from the top down.
Right. It was a grassroots movement.
In a way, yeah. It involved teachers, parents, communities, everyone invested in creating a better future for their kids.
That's amazing. This is also inspiring,
I know what you mean.
It's like we've been given this toolkit for creating positive change.
And it's a powerful toolkit.
But it can also feel a little daunting.
I get that.
Where do we even begin?
Start small.
Small.
Yeah, look around your own community. What are the challenges you see?
There are always challenges.
Exactly. Are there opportunities to collaborate with others?
To find those leverage points and make a difference.
That's it.
It could be anything, right?
Anything. Improving local schools, supporting small businesses.
What about advocating for environmental sustainability?
A perfect example. The possibilities are endless.
I love that. It's about those small acts of leverage.
That can ripple outward.
Yeah. It's like we're all part of this web, right?
Interconnected.
And even a tiny tug can send vibrations through the whole system.
It's true.
So don't underestimate the power of your own perspective.
For your experiences.
What are you passionate about? Where do you see room for improvement?
Those are the sparks that can ignite real change.
This has been an incredible deep dive.
I've enjoyed it.
I feel like I have a whole new way of seeing the world now.
That's the goal. A new lens for spotting opportunities to make a difference.
And that's what it's all about, right?
Absolutely. Remember, high leverage interventions amplify our efforts.
They make our actions go further.
And the impact can extend far beyond our initial actions.
It's like planting a seed that grows into something much bigger.
I like that.
So to everyone listening,
Yes, to our amazing listeners.
we'll leave you with this final thought. What system in your life could benefit from a high leverage intervention?
What small change could you make today that might have a ripple effect tomorrow?
Don't underestimate the power of your actions, no matter how small they seem.
We believe in you.
And that's it for our deep dive into high leverage interventions.
Thanks for joining us.
We hope you enjoyed the journey and feel inspired to create positive change in your own unique way.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep leveraging your knowledge for good.
Until next time.